Super Rugby 2019 Power Rankings. If you are new to my Power Rankings videos, which I did last year, it's basically a separate measure aside from the table to get a feel for where teams are at. Last year was the first time I did it fully for a year, and the formula that I used to try and calculate where teams are at needed a bit of adjustment throughout the year. I'm trying to make it kind of more dynamic than just a static table, which just gives you single points for wins, like 4 points for a win or whatever, 5 points, bonus points, all that kind of stuff. I'm trying to have a look at how strong was the team that beat that other team. If it's getting a bonus point over the Sunwolves at home, or is it beating the Crusaders away? These are all different, and the idea of the power rankings is to try and get kind of a measure over the course of the comp just as to where teams are at. It's all very subjective because it's partly me kind of gauging where teams are in terms of their own strength and how much a result is worth. Was it home or away? How strong were the two teams playing? How big was the margin? So some of it's based on the numbers and some of it is based just on my own gut feel. So we'll see how the power rankings go throughout the year. That being said, it's week 1, so the data set is pretty small. So hopefully, as we kind of mosey on down the season, the patterns should be less jumping around. Teams shouldn't be, dropping 5 or 10 spots for one result. We may see a little bit of that early on, and over the course of the season, we should hopefully see some kind of better trends. I'll try and make it. I feel like I've tweaked the formula enough to make it kind of dynamic week to week, so we're not putting the same weight on a result in week 1 when it was, when we're already up to like week 12. It's the more recent results that are going to give you a better indication on how well that team is running. So let's get started. It's week 1, round 1. Got to start somewhere. It's not going to be all that pretty, and some of the teams who are the favourites for the comp are not in the top 2 spots, so we'll see how things go. 15th, if there's one team that is steady, it's pretty much the Sunwolves. They stayed at 15th for most of the season last year. I believe they jumped out a couple of times, but for the most part, they were 15th on my power rankings. So they started the season off at home, albeit in Singapore, and they've got a hiding by the team who finished 8th last year. So not even kind of a top 2-3 team, not a finalist, not a semi-finalist, but a quarter-finalist. Not a good start. We'll see if they can kind of pick things up. But, they were 15th last year on my power rankings. And no surprises they start here. Next is the Stormers. Again, kind of no surprise there. They're only marginally above the Sunwolves, to be fair. The only difference being they got their whooping at home rather than away. But the Stormers were bad away from home all last season. So we'll see how they go at Newlands. If they can kind of get some results there, they'll be jumping up the rankings, but if they continue their trend of always losing away, it's going to be a pretty long season. Next, 13th, I've got the Brumbies. They had a very winnable game to start their season against the Rebels, and they kind of fluffed their lines. They didn't really get close enough to nick that one. They were under pressure for a fair amount of time, and they weren't kind of able to capitalise. When they were in the lead, they didn't build up enough of a lead in that first half with the wind. And they ended up they didn't get smashed, but it's a pretty disappointing home loss to start the season, especially when you consider that they were kind of riding high towards the end of last season. They weren't able to carry that form over the break, and they may be having to settle back in again if that's the case. And they are a slow starter. The Aussie Conference could be gone by the time they get into it, but I guess we'll see. Still early days. Next, I'm rounding out the bottom row is the Jaguares. Disappointing home loss for them. They've traditionally had the wood over the Lions at home, but this year bucks the trend. It probably doesn't help them that it was the first round and the Lions sent a full-strength squad for a change. They didn't look sharp. They looked a bit rusty. The Lions were definitely the better of the two teams. They've got another chance at home this coming week to prove how things are, but not an ideal start. So that's the bottom teams. Would you believe the Blues are not in that bottom row? Hoorah. One game into it. Next, it's the Waratahs in 11th. Another result that, I mean, they only lost by the smallest of margins against the Hurricanes, but it was at home, and despite the result, they struggled in large periods of that game. They were under pressure, and they eventually cracked. They had a couple of tries that they were, lucky they got scratched off, but eventually the third time it stuck. And I suppose Bernard Foley had a chance to put them back in front towards the end, but that would have been a total, not a fluke, but it would have been a fortunate victory if they had got it. So I suppose a bonus point loss against the New Zealand team is not the worst way to start the season, but in front of what was a really good crowd. You guys said it was around 17,000. They certainly could have done a wee bit better. Next is my Blues. They are in 10th, which is probably higher than I had them all last season. It's a loss to start the season, but it's against the defending champions. It was only by 2 points. On another day, they probably could have won that game. So I'm still kind of torn with the Blues. Is this a sign that they are on the right track and improving? Or is this their high point, and I'm going to be looking back in a few months saying, man, remember that time the Blues lost to the Crusaders by only 2 points? That was a good team. Time will tell with the Blues, but considering they had a pretty tough start against a tough opposition, can't complain too much. Chiefs are in at 9, so this rounds out all the losing teams. Disappointing loss. Highlanders traditionally not the strongest travelling team, and the Chiefs for the most part are pretty good at home, but again, perhaps missing a few big names, and that Highlanders bench just added a bit more impact. Just a shade off the pace. A lot of the New Zealand teams, to be fair, in that first round did not look sharp. You look at the South African teams, and apart from the Stormers, they seem to hit the ground, I suppose, a bit better. But it's still very early in the comp, so I would not be surprised if the Chiefs go shooting up from here. The Reds, wow, congratulations, Reds. Likewise with the Blues, they spent most of their time at the bottom end of this board last season, apart from a few good wins at the start. They had the bye, so they're in the middle. Nothing much doing there. Next one is the Crusaders. Is this as low as they're going to go? Probably. They only just squeaked past the Blues, who were a weak team last year. This is a team that finished 14th. And only won one game at home against the Reds. So in theory, it shouldn't have been a tough prospect. So again, it's hard to know first round, are the Blues better? Or are the Crusaders just starting slow and still managed to get a win? I think probably we're going to see a lot more from the Crusaders as the season goes on. 6th, they got the Rebels. Yep, they did a job. They went and beat the Brumbies away. Could have been a harder game, but the Brumbies, I mean, you look at some of the positions in their lineup with the guys the Rebels have brought in, and you can perhaps understand that the squad does have a bit more depth. The Brumbies weren't able to exercise that front row muscle like we thought they might have. And likewise with last year, the Rebels are off to a flyer. Not like electric, but solid. And I think they've got a bye next week. I'll have to double check the schedule, but we will see if they are able to kind of kick on and front up a bit more with their big forwards. If that's the case, they've certainly got the backs to threaten some of the top teams this year. Next, Hurricanes. Yep, they went over to Sydney and got a win. They look rusty. I think if they had played a number of the other teams in this first round, if that had been an away trip to Pretoria like last year, I think they would have got beaten. Likewise, I think the Lions probably would have beat them based on the way they started. So, but again, like I said with the Crusaders, if you can play poorly away from home and still get a win, take that all the way to the bank, man. The Blues couldn't get a home win, so it's definitely something that you shouldn't be too concerned about. Team's only going to get better. Next, this one may seem a bit harsh. Bulls in 4th. Sure enough, they put the Stormers to the absolute sword. But as I said, the Stormers last year were atrocious away from home. so it's not that much of a surprise. And the Bulls were at home. They're the only home team to get a victory this season. Kind of works into the way I calculate things. They certainly did the margin, and they did as much as they could pretty much, but I still think we need to see them tested against stronger opposition and away from home. Early days. Next, Sharks are in third. Only reason I've really got them above the Bulls is because they did it away. That's pretty much the only... I'm splitting hairs. They're pretty much equivalent into my calculations, but I've put the Sharks there. They did go into Singapore and do a proper job on the Sunwolves. They went behind early, but from what you guys told me who watched the full game, their forward pack absolutely fronted up and just dominated the Sunwolves. So it's an encouraging start for Rob Dupree's men. And likewise with the Bulls, we need to see them do it against tougher opposition. Second, I put the Lions because that trip to Argentina was actually a really tough prospect. As I said, Stormers at home. When the Stormers are visiting your home, you should be beating them based on last year's results. And the Sharks beating the Sunwolves, despite the fact the Sunwolves did get a couple of wins towards the end of last season, it's no huge surprise. But the Lions had never beaten the Jaguares in Argentina before. They got it done by enough. They were never going to lose it right at the death. And they managed to deny the Jaguares a bonus point, so it's a very good effort from them. Again, I still think there's more to come from them. I think that squad's going to look a bit better as the season goes on. Likewise with most of the teams, but good enough for second, which puts the Highlanders in top spot. They did it away from home against the Chiefs in Hamilton. The main factor for me is that they did it in a way that's so unexpected because they are so bad away from home. Not that the Highlanders are a bad team, but they honestly look like a three-quarter strength team when they're away from home last season. And they went behind and managed to come back. So it's a bit of mental fortitude, and it's changing, I guess, that old mentality of we're not the same team away. So with the way I calculated things, I'm splitting hairs with a lot of these teams. I've calculated them to very similar amounts or exactly the same. Got the Highlanders at number one. The Lions are very close behind. The Sharks are very close behind. The Bulls are very close behind. All these guys are very close. There's a bit of a gap between some of the other teams who had closer results, but this is the first power rankings for 2019. It's definitely going to shift. Teams who've got a 100% record in 1 week are suddenly going to go to 50%, and that's going to drop them like an anchor, or some of these teams are going to really shoot up. Others I expect to kind of stay towards the bottom, but hey, we'll see. You guys let me know your thoughts. I really do like the power rankings videos. I find them really fun to do. Partly just to see how the board's going to look once I've input all my data, but also tweaking things and seeing how well does this stack up when teams actually play each other. Will the team who's first beat the team who's fifth when they play next week? That kind of stuff. But you guys let me know your thoughts. Still first week, as I said, but you guys let me know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.